Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Americas. Our first match for day number 2 is Muzzy versus Empanizado. This is a matchup that is new to Grandmasters because Empanizado is a newly minted Grandmasters heading into 2020. Taking a look at the bans, it is both a no Warlock lineup, which is, again, like we were talking about yesterday, a little bit surprising to see people were considering no Warlock because I personally thought that Warlock was really good. However, it seemed like there was a handful of players out there that just kind of doubted Warlock and wasn't sure about it on the fence. It seemed to be a little bit more prominent amongst the European players, but in Americas, very much so as well. And if you ban Demon Hunter, you take away one of Warlock's best matchups anyway. So if you're going to be banning Demon Hunter, you perhaps can focus on other strategies. And the only difference that we see in terms of the class differences between Empanizado and Muzzy is Mage versus the Rogue. So with that being said, TJ, how do you like this head-to-head here today?
It's a pretty interesting one because you can tell that both players had similar ideas coming into the week. They both have Spell Druid. They both have the Bomb Warrior, the sort of semi-aggressive, bomb battle rage tempo, risky skipper, Corsair Cash Warrior. I think that's what it's called nowadays. But they differ in a few ways, right? The big one is Empanizado has Rogue and Muzzy has Mage, and he has the Highlander Mage, and he does have some choices in the Highlander Mage that aren't, I would say, standard right now. But there's just so much wiggle room with the deck because it's 30 unique cards. The Frizz Kindle Roost is, I think, the card that I kind of want to spotlight there because there's not that many dragons in the deck, right? There's Malagos, Kalecgos, and the Alexstraszas, and that's it, right? So it's it doesn't have like as much value as it would if you saw it in just a pure dragon deck or a deck that relied a lot more heavily on dragons. So I'm curious to see how that choice is going to work, but he does have kind of additional early game. Half the deck is 4 mana or below, which is not something we've seen often from Highlander Mages in previous metas, especially because of Luna's Pocket Galaxy. And this deck worked pretty well for Language Hacker. When we saw him yesterday, he just struggled to get across the finish line and had some pretty poor outcomes in situations where he needed good outcomes. And I'm curious to see how it's going to fare for Muzzy against Empanizado, who does have a pretty unique lineup coming into this week.
Yeah, and this is our T-Mobile deck spotlight of the day for the Highlander Mage. So we'll see if that Highlander Mage can carry the torch from Language Hacker, as it is one of the most interesting and versatile, yet also flexible and inflexible decks at the same time. It's quite the paradox, Highlander Mage, and it's going up against a deck that just has a lot of raw power. I wouldn't say that Spell Druid has great defensive capabilities, but it's got a little bit. The most important thing that it can do, though, is just really go 0 to 60 super quick. Mm-hmm. Games can end very fast. So I'm not exactly sure how the Highlander Mage it can exactly tech for things like Spell Druid in the current metagame, because I don't think most players would consider Spell Druid to be a deck that they want to use their mage to counter with. Mm-hmm. However, it does have tools at their disposal, so I'm looking forward to see if Muzzy can find a way to stop this aggression, because we've been seeing Spell Druids just destroy everything in their path, or sometimes get destroyed by the other Spell Druids.
Yeah, Spell Druid, at least so far from what we've seen, and from what we can kind of look at the Swiss bracket and the stats from there and determine, is it's very feast or famine. They're ending games incredibly quickly, having their huge Kael'thas turns or exotic Mount Seller turns early on in the game, or they just fizzle out because their 2 waves of Glowfly Swarm was dealt with. But Mage is a deck that its removal comes quite late. Outside of Flame Ward and like Zephyrus into an AoE, you really have to wait until like Blizzard to really have an answer to wide board states, especially considering they're not really putting stuff on the board to contest Glowfly Swarms early. They're kind of passing for the first couple turns most of the time. So from what we've seen, the win rate for Mage against Druid has been pretty abysmal. It's actually one of Druid's best matchup. It's definitely up there. 70% win rate across the matches that we've seen so far for the Druid against Mage. And granted, there's some Spell Mage thrown in there, but that's kind of a testament to just how tough it can be sometimes for Mage to keep clearing board after board.
Yeah, and neither player really brought Priest, which seems to be Druid's worst matchup right now. And so this is probably a matchup that Empanizado will be very happy to have. Now, that being said, does Muzzy have some pretty good tool, or Muzzy does have some pretty good tools right now. He's got the curve with Zephyrus into a 3 and a 4 cost minion, and perhaps can even ramp into cards like the Amazing Reno, which can really help deal with those sticky giant boards that can be generated. So I like the Zephyrus. I know a lot of people love holding on to Zephyrus as a removal option, but as a tempo tool early on, it can be very powerful.
Yeah, it can definitely be give you more options at least. The Overconfident Orc, I feel like, is a card that's been pretty undervalued, just because 3 mana, even if you consider it just to be a 1/6 taunt in a lot of scenarios, is actually decent just for buying you time. I sort of put it in kind of the same category as Bone Wraith, where a lot of times it can be value traded over easily, but it buys you a lot of time to get to more powerful turns. It buys you time to get to those freezes or to those big AoE spells, which in this matchup can be pretty crucial. Especially considering Empanizado's start has been quite good, and he does not lack follow-up. That's for sure. He's both Glowfly Swarms, he has Kael'thas. It feels like he's going to be in a good spot if he finds some of those 0-mana spells to get rolling with, because he has the overflows as well. So if he starts the chain's going to keep going until he feels satisfied with his board. I like this.
This is very clever. So when Muzzy is playing this Doomsayer, he's preemptively getting ahead of anything like a Glowfly Swarm. Empanizado also has way too many cards to try and play an Overflow. But Empanizado does draw a second Overgrowth off the top of his deck, and now he's going to go to 10 mana. That is an absurd amount of mana crystals to have on turn 5, I think it is.
Yeah. Well, because Muzzy also
6.
played a ramp.
Yeah.
So it is turn 5. No, because Muzzy's on coin, so yeah, he would have been on 6 mana. Yeah, so you're right. He'll be on 10 at 6.
He'll be at 10 at 6. It is pretty absurd. Now, that being said, Empanizado still needs a little bit more setup. He needs cheaper cards. He has Kael'thas, and he has all these really cool cards, but he does need some cheaper cards to activate Kael'thas reliably, and that's one of them. Having Bogbeam be 0 mana now gives Empanizado a lot of options at his disposal. But the question becomes, how do you first layer this?
Well, he can go Kael'thas, Bogbeam, Power of the Wild into Overflow, and then search for the other 0 mana cards. Right? He has Innervate, Moonfire, Ironbark, the second Bogbeam. He's got a good amount still in the deck, and he draw 5 cards. He does have the Force Aid, so he can play this Power of the Wild plus Glowfly Swarm here and still have gas. If he has to use this Glowfly Swarm and then the second Glowfly Swarm where he's not happy with how his hand is, he's got like that extra layer of gas where, like Asia Pacific, a lot of the players that brought Spell Druid in Asia Pacific just stopped at the Glowfly Swarms. They didn't play Force of Nature, they didn't play Force Aid. Once those 2 waves of threats plus the exotic Mount Sellers were gone, they were done for. So we see like players go both ways because Empanizado has also cut an exotic Mount Seller to make way for that Force Aid. So it's a lot of paths that players have decided to take.
Yeah, Muzzy's going to take this board very seriously. Does not want to just get destroyed by a Savage Roar. Ideally, he'd be able to utilize other cards like that Orc and that Frizz to fight back for some board presence. But, the threat of Savage Roar and just winning outright is too high. So Rolling Fireball, definitely a solid choice. Empanizado most likely going to start going off this Kael'thas. Now he's picked up another cheap card. He has the most important combination, which is Kael'thas and Overflow. And now we're going to see some miracles happen here.
Yeah, with 4 mana remaining too, he doesn't even need the 0 mana spells. He can just keep going off with even things that are a little bit more expensive. Picks up double Innervate, but doesn't pick up Gift of the Wild.
Yeah, it's sort of a little awkward.
Yeah, but hey, he can reload again because he has enough space to go for the second overflow. And still 6 mana available. Oh, Fungal Fortunes.
Okay,
So
Fungal Fortunes.
So he can go Ironbark, Fungal Fortunes. He does have his exotic Mount Seller in his hand. So that's all of his minions drawn. Because he has Kael'thas and exotic Mount Seller is the only 2 minions. So that would be just draw 3 spells. Holy moly.
Yeah, it seemed like Empanizado actually just kind of ran out of time. This is something that I think the Druid deck can struggle with at times, which is your turn timer.
Ooh.
Oh, he didn't get it Soul of the Forest off in time.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't think Muzzy can really punish it, though. He's a turn away from Puzzle Box. Oh, no.
Oh,
he didn't hit Blizzard.
No, he needed Blizzard or Frostnova or something, but this is this game over? So
That's
if you
game
Ray
over.
of Frost and he freezes a target on the other side, let's say he freezes the ideal target and he freezes 2 5-attack minions. There's still 13 power. Oh no, excuse me, there's way more than that. There's 17 power plus the Savage Roar. That would kill him. So Muzzy is dead.
Yeah.
And the struggles of this Druid, the Mage continues. Mage specifically against Druid seems to be such a difficult matchup for this Mage to overcome.
Yeah.
And Druid being as popular as it is definitely makes it feel like this Mage can be a liability at times.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, Mage does have some good matchups. It does seem like Mage has been getting the best of Demon Hunter, which is saying a lot. Demon Hunter has been wrecking everything. It's one of the public enemies for most lineups. But it definitely is going to be quite a struggle to get a win against Druid. So Empanizado starting off his America's Grandmasters broadcast career off on the right foot, getting a win over one of the most storied players in the region.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good start, and Highlander Mage, even though it struggled against Druid, getting a win under his belt, it's got to feel good. Not sure. He never really seemed like a player. We talked to him a good amount because we saw him at championships before. He also competed in Hearthstone Global Games, and back before, I never cast Hearthstone Global Games, but I did a lot of the interviews and content for it in the first iteration of it. And when I did that, I had interviews with a lot of the players, especially from America's region, and I talked to Empanizado a lot. He would always say that he got nervous, but it never really showed. So I don't know if this is going to be a breath of fresh air for him, that his first game on broadcast was a win. But, look, he just had that one turn where he probably could have done more with the Kael'thas turn. But to be honest, he did a lot, and he did enough to win in the game. He just missed a Soul of the Forest, which, maybe if Puzzle Box wasn't in the hand, and that Tortollan Pilgrimus found Puzzle Box, that's like the only situation where he'd be punished in that regard. So good play nonetheless outside of that, and nets himself one.
Yeah, and I think what you said was correct. He understood the macro line well enough that it wasn't important that he nailed like the exact optimal turn. He just needed to get close enough, and he'd be getting there anyways. So we're going to go into game number 2. Muzzy going to queue up the Mage, and he is going up against Warrior.
Okay.
Taking a look at some of the stats here. How does the Mage deal against Warrior?
It has been doing okay, but it's quite a low sample size. It's a 71% win rate, but only across 7 games, and that's all 3 regions. And that's also, because of all 3 regions, there's Spell Druid mixed in. And I think it does better against Spell Druid than Highlander Mage, because Spell Druid draws their cards much faster. Or Spell Mage draws their cards much faster. It doesn't have like that big punch. Like they kind of deal these like incremental board states, whereas Warrior can navigate around that. But Empanizado also has a little bit of a unique Warrior overall. He does have like the package of the normal package, the Anchor, Risky Skipper, Armorsmith, Battle Rage, Corsair Cache. But he has 2 Blade Storms for removal. That seems to be tucked in there primarily for Druid, but I can see it having use against big stuff in general. He's got the 2 Clockwork Goblins as well. So he's more all in on the actual bomb package because, I mean, if you think about how many bombs he can shuffle in, the 2 Clockwork Goblins plus 2 Wrench Calibers that have the potential to be buffed by the Corsair Cache, that's a lot of bombs. So I would say maybe he has a slightly better percentage chance to win than the stats may say. But I do like Mage in this instance because they tend to be able to stunt the aggression quite well and aren't susceptible to those big like armor boards because they don't really get outvalued.
Right. Yeah, there's those big threats. How do you just deal with them in the late game as the warrior when you when you have 1 damage AoE at a time to try to use your removal? Bombs aren't boombots aren't reliable. Bombs aren't reliable damage sources either. So Empanizado is going to have a tricky time if he can't pile on the aggression early. Ooh, decisions here for Muzzy on turn 4. Something that the Highlander decks, I feel like, part of the reason why people like it is because the play pattern changes game to game, but you don't often have these many choices because you're trying to outfit your mana curve to be good at all stages of the game. So usually you have like 1 or 2 things at most, but in this case, Muzzy had several options at his disposal. Chooses the Frizz just to discount all of the dragons, which I guess makes the most sense because those are guaranteed mana crystals that you get now, versus the mana saber might get you 1 or 2 crystals at best before it dies.
And temporary crystals.
Temporary crystals.
Which you may not be able to make the most use out of it. Of course, they become permanent crystals like once you spend them, I guess. It's a weird, I don't know, that's weird. Kargath Blade Fist, we've seen that in a couple decks. Saw it in Europe over there today. And I think it's pretty good. It's sometimes it doesn't seem like it fits in this style of deck, but it does give you like maybe a late game insurance policy, especially in like the mirror matchup when it gets down to the wire and both players are like shuffling bombs into each other's decks and trying to deal those last points of damage. I can give you like a burst of armor to try and block that, but it's expensive in a deck that otherwise wants to be doing like a lot of little flurries of damage instead of one big minion at a time.
Yeah, I think that these prime cards, as the meta continues to slow down a little bit with each passing patch, because we're going to eventually get to be able to play turn 8 or 9.
Yep, one day.
We'll see the primes, be able to have more time in the sun because you just need the game to go longer. There's just no way that if it's a fast meta, you can play cards like prime in your deck. That being said, Empanizado, is that card going to be relevant in this game? Maybe, maybe not. I probably would guess that the more impactful things are how do bombs mess with the Highlander effect of the mage? Does Muzzy end up stabilizing by the time boombots start hitting the board and there's just a lot of damage that he's guaranteed to take?
Yeah, actually that's a good point, and one that I had not mentioned earlier. But one thing I will point out is that oftentimes actually using like Reno the Relicologist is difficult in this matchup. Because there's usually a lot of things on board that you don't necessarily want to damage one at a time. Bomb Wrangler being one of them, obviously Armorsmith. So sometimes that can not be a liability, but be tougher to use. But, let's say we do get later on in the game, Muzzy has a turn where he wants to be proactive and play Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. If there's still two more bombs in his deck, he's not going to be able to do that. Or Zephyrus in a pinch. But right now, he's doing all right. He's got the Amazing Reno in hand in case things go awry, crazily. But he doesn't have those kind of proactive plays. He has no Dragon for Dragoncaster. Amazing Reno is still multiple turns away. So things can get out of hand quickly if he doesn't find some type of proactive play to make, when Empanizado doesn't have the strongest of turns.
Yep, and Empanizado is pretty much just on that weak game plan, so to speak. I mean, right now he does not have a lot developed. He draws the cash, the Corsair cash, but he already drew all 3 of his weapons, so that's a dead draw.
Yep.
And that's never a great feeling. That being said, he still has a lot of bombs that he can shuffle in.
Yeah. Got Wrench Caliber as another Clockwork Goblin, another Wrench Caliber, and then after that, he has the Horde Pillager, which may somewhat get him Anchor back, but after he plays both Wrench Calibers, will very likely get him the Wrench Caliber. So, all right, we'll see him on his something. It's just
see him on his something. Part of me is also tempted to maybe explore a Conjurer's Calling setup too.
Okay. Like Conjurer's Calling the 4-drop, or double Conjurer's Calling the 4-drop?
Yeah, if you Conjurer's Calling once, you're floating a ton of mana. I think I'd rather just play a 6-mana minion here.
Okay, well that's a good outcome from the bomb. The Mana Saber absorbed some of that extra damage. Wow,
Oh.
Kareth Prime drawn already. Okay.
That could be huge. Kargath Prime gives you a bajillion armor.
Yeah.
Whenever it rushes into the minions, so it's a really big swing in terms of life, and I think that's partially why people get really excited, because the idea that Kargath Prime can single-handedly end aggro decks game plans, but it does require some amazing things to happen in terms of you need to have it in your hand, it needs to die early, it needs to be drawn before the game has already been decided. And it just feels like an unreliable game plan now that Towncrier has rotated out with the Witchwood expansion. If Towncrier was still in it, I think Kargath Prime would be such a cool card to keep in your deck.
Oh yeah, because you could just Towncrier the Kargath and then save the other Towncrier to pull the Prime.
Yep, exactly.
That's all you need. You just build a deck around that. Yeah. The one thing about Kargath Prime also is that it can be raced, because it can only attack once, so it can only gain the 10 armor once, and that's once a turn, and the 10-10 on it, you kind of want to go face to initiate a race the other way, but then you're not gaining the armor, so it's not like going both ways, if that makes sense. Like Spell Druids, I think in a Europe game earlier, we saw Spell Druid attempt to race the Kargath Prime, and it would have been successful outside of some other things that happened with the Warrior deck. But that's kind of an interesting thing to note. Also, if you trade into it, it doesn't gain the armor. It's only when it attacks and kills, not when it kills. Like there's a distinction there. Well, CMI can be able to take out this Bloodboil Brute.
Yeah, I was evaluating the value of Deep Freeze here, but I think he'd rather use it in a position where he wants to freeze like the face or something else. But Tiamat is a great setup into a Conjurer's Calling. And then if he really needs to, on turn 10, he can go ahead and punt with the Amazing Reno.
Mm-hmm. So there are currently 3 bombs shuffled into the deck of Muzzy. So this is a fully juiced Blastmaster Boom. Oh man, it's been a while since I've said that, Dan. Brings me back to Season 1 Grandmasters of last year, where all we cast was Bomb Warrior because of Specialist.
Yeah, those are the days, TJ. But we have some new cards. For one thing, those Bomb Warriors weren't playing Kargath Prime. Muzzy like, wow, I can't believe you drew that already?
It's been a couple tough draw pan-outs for Muzzy from his side in the past couple games. But I will say, Dan, when we had the meeting to determine which formats would be used in the rotating Swiss rounds, I did throw in Specialist into the mix. Nobody even paid attention to me. Everybody just acted like I wasn't there.
For 1 week, it might be good.
Yeah.
Might.
Might?
I didn't say it would. I was saying it might.
Well, yeah, it would just be Demon Hunter.
That's true.
Yeah.
But then, like, the person who plays Warlock would just kill them all.
That's true. That's very true. But there was the next level, you know, of if you think everybody's going to bring Warlock, then you bring like Highlander Mage. So we just be casting a bunch of Highlander Mage.
Yeah. Wow, it's like we've done this before.
I know, right? Specialist casting. Love it. Miss it. Let me just throw one more word out there, Dan, just to see how it feels, okay?
Yeah.
Tertiary.
Ooh.
I don't know. I don't like it. Okay, well, bombs are
How
coming.
about the tertiary bomb being drawn?
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Looks like he collected a triple.
Ouch.
Pretty sure Muzzy is playing the wrong game, though. You're not trying to find 3 of a kind when it comes to the bombs.
Yeah.
This is standard. We usually like 2 ofs at most. Muzzy took 15 damage. That's a lot. Puzzle
here
box. Just the raw box.
So he has the attack, and I think he moused over the card gath and realized that it was still there, and he winced.
He's getting... Oh.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I like that. Nope, don't like that.
He keeps making big buff minions and then kind of making it worse. Oh gosh. So basically he made a few Annoyatrons. Was hoping that Kargoth Prime would get humiliated or subdued.
Or anything.
Or anything, really. But Empanizado with the Golden Guardian Aug Merchant has an opportunity to even protect the Prime from dying.
What now?
Very weird game this is.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of this one. And also, this kind of shows the awkwardness of Bladestorm when essentially not being played against Druid. Bladestorm's great when it's a Glowfly Swarm board or a, Forest Aid or a bunch of things that are exactly the same. But when it's a little things that are on the board, Bladestorm just kind of ends up being dead a lot of the time. So he just has to play this Dread Corsair and pass and hope that eventually he'll be able to attack with this Strange Caliber to shuffle another bomb in. Because I think there's only 1 bomb in the deck now. Because there was 4 bombs shuffled in total. He drew 3 of them.
Woof. Okay. Well,
What to do?
Muzzy thinking about utilizing this Alexstrasza while he can to potentially bounce back all the way to 15 life. He can keep the Water Elemental frozen, keep the enemy hero frozen with the Water Elemental, and it's not going to die anytime soon with that Divine Shield. Barring an incredible series of Bladestorm activations.
Mm-hmm. Well, this Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I gotta say that Water Elemental is quickly climbing up my my tier list of very useful minion/cards for the mage class.
Yeah, well, players are playing the Deep Freeze, and they're also playing Water Elementals, like just naturally in the deck. And I feel like Warrior kind of gets incidentally targeted by that, even though those techs are mostly in there for Demon Hunter, right, to shut off the combo Demon Hunter and even just the damage from tempo Demon Hunter. It just kind of annoyingly counters Warrior as well, because even though they don't rely fully on their weapons, it's a big part of their game plan now, especially with the Corsair cache.
Yeah, now Muzzy gonna keep that face frozen and go for this Conjurer's Calling. Finds a King Crush and restores Alexstrasza to her former glory. Oh, another one.
Let's get a couple more of those.
Oh my.
Okay.
I don't know if he needs Malagos, but he's got a really big board now, and Warrior can't really deal with it. It's kind of like what we're talking about. There's this window which Warrior can pressure. Empanizado got Muzzy down to 10 life.
Yeah.
But once that door is closed, it is very tough to reopen it again. And I don't know if Empanizado has that window any longer to pressure Muzzy. It looks like this might be the end. Okay. Skipper, I've seen some amazing Skipper plays, especially even just most recently with that Europe. The end of Europe Grandmasters with both Falcane and Casey was quite the sight to behold with the back, like the non-stop Skipper action.
Oh, jeez.
It was so
it was
crazy.
rough.
It brought me back to the Patreon days, honestly. I was just like, how do I best set this up?
Yeah. And then you play it with Bomb Wranglers, you also have to worry about board space. Can he do anything with Bladestorm as well? Like, can he do anything fancy?
I mean, yes, but the problem is his own Risky Skipper might get in the way because it's really weak as well.
Yeah, the Guardian Aug Merchant is just like a net even on a board like this when you're trading because it deals 1 damage and then it just dies itself. Maybe he can gain enough armor to buy himself 1 more turn, but he only has 1 bomb in the deck. And he's never going to be able to attack with his weapon as long as this Water Elemental's alive. And it doesn't even look like he has a way to kill it. Yeah, I think he realizes this.
Cast a concede, and that's going to do it. Muzzy with the deep freeze started turning the game around and has now tied up the series 1 game apiece. Now, Mage got the win. We're kind of talking about how Mage is designed to kill other things that aren't the druid, so not a really big surprise there that a very one-sided matchup throughout this entire weekend has once again leaned towards the Mage. And that's a really nice one because I feel like Mage versus the Rogue, we just haven't had enough of a sample size yet. We've had 4 games of it, and we haven't had too much data to pull from. So, I think Rogue versus Mage was a very even matchup in the Descent of Dragons meta, but I think that was largely because people's deck lists kind of varied in terms of what the tech they brought. And I don't want to leave that up. I want to get the favorable matchup if I'm Muzzy.
Also, it's kind of an interesting rogue deck from Empanizado. It is like the rogue from the last metagame, right? He doesn't really have many new cards. In fact, I don't think he has any from Ashes of Outland. Yeah, there's 0 Ashes of Outland cards in his Galakron rogue. It's just good old Galakron rogue, 2-ups, no Highlander. No Hanar, no secrets.
Interesting.
There's a questing and an Umbral Stalker.
Well, I mean, I don't think you necessarily need some of those new cards that Rogue has because Rogue seem to mainly have gotten 2 things, which is a secret package to help outfit their early game tempo, and the other thing is stealth minions to help pressure. And Galakron Rogue doesn't really require either. In fact, they might suffer a little bit if you end up taking out other really high impact cards that are more in line with the Galakron that you want to play. So that is interesting. In the meantime, though, we're going to go to the Warrior Mirror, which everyone knows can get pretty interesting. Borderline chaotic and a little bit clowny at times. However, that being said, these are different deck lists. We do have Muzzy leaning more towards a tempo and pressure-oriented warrior, and we do have Empanizado that leans more towards bomb and playing later into the game, trying to get value off of cards like Horde Pillager and Bladestorm, as you saw earlier.
Yeah, I'm not sure who I would consider even the favorite in this one. It's kind of bizarre. Neither player has the egg package like the Terran Gorfiend Serpent Egg, but both players are playing bombs. Both players playing Blastmaster Boom. Muzzy is playing the combo, which is the Rampage Corcoran Elite Bloodsworn Mercenary. Whereas Empanizado is not. He's not even playing Inner Rage or Bloodsworn Mercenary. So he's fighting like a much more like minion-based game plan where he's just kind of playing minions and kind of trying to curve out that way instead of going for like big combos. So like less fancy things from Empanizado. It's way more straight up shuffle bombs, and it seems like was more geared towards just fighting off druids because of those blade storms than it was for fighting mirror matchups. But I still, it's hard for me to say who's favored because sometimes having those combo pieces in your hand is not necessarily an advantage because it means you have cards that could end up being dead, whereas just curving out with minions and a tempo-based matchup can oftentimes lead to more success.
Yeah, and I think that success really does become a lot more draw dependent when you have situational cards like that. So, you know, I think in tournament environments that makes more sense. Clearly, it worked out for him. Empanizado got here off of a 4-3 record, which against the best players in your region, that's a winning record, and I'll take that every time. However, I do favor more consistent game plans as opposed to just hoping that things get drawn in the right order. Because when they do, they're fantastic, as you see with a lot of Highlander decks. And it's going to be working out here for Empanizado as well.
Yeah, the Scott Crag not looking too good.
Kind of awkward.
Muzzy, but
he's not going to ever have that active battle cry.
No, I don't think there's any randomly generated ways to get a quest. You can't even discover quests. But he doesn't really have a choice but to play it, because that Core Corner Elite is a pretty, I don't want to say a crucial tool, because you're probably not winning by comboing your opponent. Like in some matchups that go really slow, he'll have to play that at some point, most likely, to try and gain tempo back. But if he can hold on to it, he will. And this may be the only time he has 4 mana where he can unload a Sky General Crag and not take a ton of punishment on the backswing. So that is his only Core Corner Elite as well. So just in case, right? There's not a significant downside to play it right now, since it's early enough in the game for him not to be too punished. Blood Boil Brute coming in hot.
Yeah, this card is super impactful. Blood Boil Brute is, you know, the twice as big, twice as expensive version of Mogu Flesh Shaper in a way. I rarely see Blood Boil Brute come down for fewer than a few mana crystals, but sometimes it gets to a state of the board where it can come down for super cheap, and then you have this 6/8 taunt, which also can get replicated if you have a combo with Bloodsworn Mercenary. So very, very useful card, and one of the more important ones, I would say, in this matchup in particular, because you know that your opposing warrior also wants to damage his own minions.
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
Muzzy does actually find the anchor and does buff it to a 3-attack weapon. So now perhaps you can utilize that anchor and set up some other combo turns similar to what Empanizado is trying to do.
Yeah, it's kind of a play that he has to go for. Muzzy does have a fantastic setup in a couple turns, where he will be able to draw a good chunk of his deck with the Battle Rage, because he has Risky Skipper, Armor Smith, and can pick up some more cheap minions with this anchor and pick up more pirates in his deck. So he will have the card draw necessary to find the additional resources. Just will he have time, because right now Empanizado's had the board lead and doesn't look like he's going to give it up anytime soon. Well, I don't know. Maybe I spoke too soon, because right now Empanizado has a very rough looking hand with double Blade Storm, which is very difficult to use in this matchup, I'd say, because there's almost always a 1 health minion on board. So in a lot of situations, it's going to be a 3 health Whirlwind, or a 3 mana Whirlwind, excuse me. The Horde Pillager is basically his last proactive play. He is chaining Sky Raiders, though. That'll give him some minions to play.
Oh no. Well, I actually don't know if that's a bad thing. It's kind of bad. You want to clear this board. This is very scary. Because like it becomes this situation, this song and dance, where you might be racing each other for damage, but there's just too much pressure going the other way here for Muzz. Okay.
Right, well, that's something.
Yeah.
So it looks like he is going to go for the Risky Skipper, Armor Smith, Sky Raider Battle Rage here. I wonder if he wants to draw first with the Anchor.
Someone's gotta lead the charge.
Yeah, this is definitely the right move, just to gain back all that life through the Armor Smith and the Risky Skipper.
Huh.
More cards being drawn.
Did he draw? Had he drawn all his pirates?
I believe so. Oh no, he hadn't drawn the Sky Raiders, right?
So I wonder why he didn't attack first. Because if he doesn't attack first, then he could end up picking up all his pirates with the Battle Rage.
Okay, unless he wanted to draw first to evaluate in case he needed to play any other card, but he had no mana.
He had no mana, and Blood Boil Brute would not have been free.
Right.
Maybe if he picked up double Inner Rage, he would have used the double Inner Rage to save life total, but I don't even know if that's the case. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not something you thought about.
A slight sequencing error, but didn't really get punished.
Nope. Still had a Risky Skipper in the deck after the cards were drawn, so overall ends up being just fine.
Right.
There's also maybe he was thinking of if his hand was good enough, he may have not attacked into the Blood Boil Brute and just left it up.
Okay, I can see that.
I don't know, like if he got really good stuff, like the second Armor Smith, second Risky Skipper, etc. He may not have attacked because he wanted to set up a better board clear and not take the damage, but just trying to justify his place. Oh yeah, the Dread Corsair.
Free 3/3s, 0 mana 3/3s. They're pretty good, TJ.
Mm-hmm.
Now Muzzy has to find a way to deal with these Dread Corsairs without losing too much HP. He's got so many cards. He's got another Risky Skipper in his hand, so he should be able to deal with this board. It's all about how he wants to go about it. I think my favorite way to start picking apart boards is when I have Risky Skipper, and is to usually combine it with the Bomb Wrangler and try to like pick apart the board in a multitude of ways and use Boom Boss to help get through it. But Muzzy doesn't have the Bloodsworn Mercenary to really make that combo shine.
No, it does not. And the second Risky Skipper, he might be valuing this pretty highly as well because it's his last one.
Exactly.
Kind of an emergency board clear tool.
Yeah.
Rampage used, though. This is interesting for Muzzy. I think he was kind of torn on what to play. His hand was very awkward, to be fair. If he had in his mind from the get-go that he didn't want to use his second Risky Skipper, it's very clunky because he has 2 Wrench Calipers with an Anchor already in play, a lot of expensive minions, one being Horde Pillager, which wouldn't do anything because he hadn't even broken a weapon since the Anchor was the only weapon he equipped, in the Korkan Elite, which obviously he's shown that he'd rather hold on to that at all costs if he can to keep his potential for a combo open, which is still open because he still has the Bloodsworn Mercenaries in deck. So anytime he draws that, he all of a sudden has 12 damage minimum at his disposal. And does finally take back the board. So he has a board lead here with the Captain Greenskin, just behind on health a little bit, but there are no bombs shuffled in either player's deck. There will be after this turn, likely, as long as Empanizado swings with the Excalibur. But outside of that, there hasn't been much bomb action going on in general.
My. Wow.
Well, now there will be.
That was an amazing pickup. The Bomb Wrangler is exactly what we're talking about. Risky Skipper, Bomb Wrangler plus change. Sets up big combinations, and it's kind of what you were talking about, that Muzzy was holding the Risky Skipper, but that could be the end of his game if the bomb gets drawn. It's a 1 out of 14 chance. Whew, just a cut above 7%, but looks like he has dodged that.
Oh, he is 2 damage off lethal right now.
So the Korkan Elite, the Inner Rage, the copy is 12 damage, plus the Anchor attack would be 16.
Okay, he has a Sky Raider left in his deck. Oh, no, he doesn't. He's played both. Darn. Empanizado has a Sky Raider left in his deck. I was thinking he could swing with the Anchor. Nah, he wouldn't be able to swing with the Anchor because he would need South Sea Deckhand, which was 2 damage, but then he wouldn't have enough mana to equip a weapon.
Okay,
right.
Time to go back.
Ooh, there's going to be 2 bombs coming at him, though.
Oh, wow. That worked out great.
Wow, that was
borderline ideal.
Yeah.
But Muzzy has to debate if he wants to go for the Bloodsworn Mercenary, but he is a little vulnerable to Empanizado if he... Actually, Empanizado's weapon only does 4 damage, right? So it'd have to be specifically the Captain Greenskin. but he doesn't even have one in the deck, so he's perfectly fine.
He does, however, have a randomly generated pirate in his hand.
Sure, the pirate could have done a lot of damage.
That risky skipper is the second risky skipper is a randomly is the pirate from the Sky Raider. It could be a Captain Greenskin or a Southsea Deckhand, but I think Muzzy's willing to take that risk because he says, you have to kill me this turn. If you don't, you're very likely dead because I have combo in hand. And Empanizado here, most likely just going to clear off the board and hope that a bomb hits.
Right.
That's about all he can do in this situation. There are 2 bombs in the deck, so it would be a 1 in 7, essentially, for him to win the game. And he will lose unless he clears everything and armors up. Because Muzzy has 14 damage minimum loaded up.
Armor up.
Okay, so if this bomb hits the Blood Bowl Brute, then he's okay. Or if it hits phase for 1. Is that a bomb? It's a bomb!
Draws the bomb!
Oh, jeez.
Oh, gosh. That was brutal. Muzzy was going to win, what, 85% of the time from that position? Something like that? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a 2 out of 14, you said, right?
Yeah, so 6 out of 7 times he wins that game right there because he had guaranteed lethal next turn with Corkin Elite, Inner Rage, Bloodsworn Mercenary, plus the Ankar swing that he had loaded up the previous turn, which is exactly 14. So that's a bummer. That is a big bummer. And the Tortollan Pilgrim in Game 1 not picking up the Blizzard when he absolutely needed it. Granted, he may still lose that game anyway because there was like Soul of the Forest, but Muzzy has to be feeling quite bad right now because he's been getting the bad side of these panouts. But still got some game left. It's 2-1. He's just got to win 2 against the Rogue, which is not the most difficult thing in the world. It's not like the Warlock or Demon Hunter, right? That seem to be dominating the metagame at the moment.
Yeah, I think the Warlock and Demon Hunter dynamic doesn't really exist in this series, which is very unusual, but Muzzy still has to get through the Rogue, and Rogue still feels relatively even against most decks. Even against the Demon Hunter, Rogue seems to be floating pretty close to a 50% win rate.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem to be struggling against Warrior, though. So if Muzzy does get through with the Druid, maybe the Warrior will be enough to just help him win this series anyways. But he's going to have to win back-to-back games here.
Yeah, the matchup that I'm worried for the most for Muzzy is Empanizado's... oh no, he just won with the Warrior. Okay, that was the matchup I was worried about. And he dodged it, so the Druid is going to have an easier time winning. But we'll see. Because Druid's not a free win against Rogue. I feel like it's a decent matchup, but it's not free by any stretch of the imagination. Druid currently has a 63% win rate in Grandmasters globally across 22 games, which is a good matchup. I would say even borderline very good. The only one that Druid's been beating more is Mage, but it's not free.
Yeah, and that's because Rogue just cannot deal with a board of 2/2s.
Yeah.
They need Thanatos and Fan of Knives, and then they're like, well, I will play another board of 2/2s, and then you're like, well, you got me.
Well, Empanizado has a couple cards that are going to help a lot, and that's Flick plus Shadow Step. That lets you deal with both waves of Glowfly Swarms. He also has Winged Guardian, which is actually incredibly difficult for Spell Druid to deal with, because they have to attack minions into it. They can't use their cheating mana spells or whatever to go through it because you can't target it. So if it's the only minion on board, like, what do you Bog Beam? Well, what do you Moonfire? The face? Sure. But you're not getting through that. You have to get through it the old-fashioned way. Another thing is he has Questing. We talked about it. He has Questing plus Umbral Stalker in the deck, which does give him kind of that secondary win condition of Druids do lack just straight-up hard removal. They have incremental removal, like, the Crystal Power, Bog Beam, Wrath. But if it gets to kind of that critical mass, that can just win the game on the backswing if they just can't remove it. But it seems like Empanizado here is just using Questing as a way to stop Muzzy from potentially playing his Glowfly Swarm. But it's not going to stop him. He's just going to play it anyway and say, sure, you want to race? Let's race. You die to Savageor if you leave this, if you ignore this.
Right, and I don't think that Empanizado plans on leaving this alone. He needs to address it in some capacity.
Yep.
And it's good that Muzzy coined this out as well, not only because, well, it can't really get more value out of it anyways, but it is a turn before flick, as you mentioned. Whoa!
I like that. I don't see a problem with the face attack there. Just because he knows that he has flick. He did use Shadow Step though, so he can only do it with one wave. And this is still awkward for Savageor to deal with, right? It's just he would have to attack. If he wanted to kill questing, he'd have to face and one Glowfly into the Shield of Galcron, and then two Glowflies into the questing Adventurer. But it looks like just probably Soul of the Forest is good enough here. He can clear off the board and essentially reset. If you think of Soul of the Forest here as just a way to kill both these minions.
Right.
But this is a perfect flick board.
It's a perfect flick board, and that's why
Almost
I think
perfect.
the Crystal Power is good here for Muzzy, just to hedge against it.
Alrighty.
And Muzzy with the nod, recognizing, acknowledging that this was a possibility that he accounted for, and that's why he used his Crystal Power instead. Wow, just drawing all of the cards that he's going to play for free in a little bit. I think he even wants to cycle his Wrath, just needs to find an alternative to what he wants to do here.
Is that an Overgrowth? Oh, I thought it was an Overgrowth for a second. I was like, oh my god, Overgrowth would have been perfect. But pretty much anything at this point. Like, next turn he's going to go Exotic Mount Cellar, probably Bogbeam, and Ironbark. Just an entirely full board. He can taunt up what he pleases.
I mean, I'm okay using a Bogbeam here as well, just to make sure there is no shenanigans. There is a possibility that, you know, as a rogue player, they generate lackeys, find a way to get like a Shadow Step, and then all of a sudden you cost yourself.
He also plays double Shadow Step in the deck.
Wow, that's a big boy. And he can't really target anything with the Bogbeam.
Yeah, that's the issue. I may pivot here then and just go for Glowfly Swarm. I don't know. That's tough.
Yeah, it does seem entirely reasonable to go for a Glowfly in this position. Because then you go through the 6/8 first, and you don't have to commit to things like Bogbeam and Exotic Mount Cellar. Let your opponent play something else before you go for that big swing turn.
Yeah.
Also, if you go for an Exotic Mount Cellar and you end up burning a lot of your cards, then things like Glowfly Swarm get worse over time.
Yeah, they do. That's a good point, too. He can also follow this up with Power of the Wild. So he has a board full of 3/3s. It lines up quite well with the 6 health on board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he does have a good amount of reload. If he goes Exotic Mount Cellar next turn, plus a bunch of stuff, or Forest Aid, then he follows it up with the one that he didn't use.
Whew. One turn off from Empanizado to unlock greatness. Shadow Step on the flick would have been nutty.
Yep.
Whoa.
Oh, okay.
Well, those would be much better if they were 2/2s.
Is there a world where Empanizado can try to set up a lethal? He has 6 damage now. That would put Muzzy down to 15. He's got 4 from Kobolds, 6 from Kobolds if you count Shadow Step, and then 10 from Eviscerate, so he needs to find a way to deal 5 more damage.
Okay, he has a Stealth minion through the Skyvateer. He's got his dagger. He can.
I don't know. I think that might be a little too
optimistic.
risky. Yeah, a little too optimistic. Yeah.
Oh, he might be going for it.
Okay. I see.
I mean, I think that he is desperate enough to do something like that.
Yeah, I like that, actually. I think he realized that how is he going to win if he keeps trading down this board, right?
Right, you're not.
You're not. He just has to make some type of resilient board and then rely on the top of his deck. Draw that second Eviscerate, right? Draw, I don't know, another Evil Miscreant that picks you up double Kobold Lackey again. Because he has 10 damage from hand, 11 with the dagger. That's just raw damage that he has from hand, 12 from Skyvateer. So a second Eviscerate would be enough. Oh, a Mukla.
True, it's just that the Iron Bark has to, it will stop that dagger attack.
It will stop the dagger attack, yeah. So, and, yeah, you're right.
And this is also not discounting that whatever the exotic Mount Sunner summons can get in the way.
He has enough mana to sap also?
It's true, but he has 2 Iron Barks.
Yeah, he has 2 Iron Barks, and also if he sapped, he wouldn't have enough mana to play a second Eviscerate if he were to draw it. So, this might be a checkmate scenario here.
Right, and you can see that Muzzy taking the extra precaution just to prevent any kind of lethal setup. And Shield of Galakrond is not it, but...
Can he pick apart the board?
Oh, he's gonna draw a card first and see what happens. Okay. Can Seal of Fate get him something to answer this? Maybe? I think he's just gonna look. He's in a pretty bad spot, so it wouldn't hurt to just go for a Hail Mary. There you go, Lackey. That's exactly what he wants, but not enough. Oh, wait! I was looking Sinister Strike. 3, 7,
oh, what?
11.
Is there any clever disguises?
13.
Dispels that could... No.
Oh my, TJ, with the Sinister Strike, he was really close to lethal.
Really?
Yeah, because he could have Shadow Stepped the Cobalt Lackey, so the...
he was 2 damage off, right?
He was 2 damage off, yep. One of those things where I guess you kind of wonder if you're the rogue player, did I ever miss 2 damage? I don't think he did.
No, he didn't.
Empanizado is going to concede. Muzzy ties it up 2 games apiece. And the Druid will not be denied. The matchups that it wins so hard.
Yep. Actually, technically he did miss 2 damage, because instead of going face with everything on the turn where he played the Shield of Galakrond, he went face with the Questing Adventurer and then traded Feral Cat and a Dagger Hit into one of the Glowflies. So
right.
That was 2 damage, but like
really
the whole
miss damage?
The whole butterfly effect of trying to go down that rabbit hole, like one decision obviously changes the impact of every other decision in the game.
Right, right.
So it's impossible to say, did he miss 2 damage? Yes, technically he could have had 2 extra damage to face that game, but it would have probably impacted the board more than enough to still swing it into Muzzy's favor as the game went on. But we're going to get into the last game of the series, Game 5. It is the Warrior versus the Rogue. Warrior for Muzzy, Rogue for Empanizado.
That's right. So, looks like we are going to go straight into it. The Warrior does have a awkward start. Because 2 Battle Rages and a Rampage does not make it a very solid curve, but he does have the Imprisoned Vile Fiend, and you can wait to make a really big power turn with it. Dream Empanizado, do you attack with this Feral Cat?
Yes, most of the time. Because they're not going to Battle Rage now, and they're also not going to clear your board now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the idea is that you're trying to get ahead on the board, so you're going to be pushing the tempo anyways.
Yeah.
Seal Fate here looks nutty.
Oh, yeah.
But then we can finally see the Vile Fiend awakened.
It's not a very menacing sound when it awakens. That was the micro mummy.
Yeah.
The vile fiend is it's a sound of a vial breaking.
Oh, got it. I thought you were talking about the mummy.
No, the vile fiend. It seems a lot more menacing than it actually is. But Muzzy has control of the board. He just needs to find like Risky Skipper like now to try and get these battle rages online. I guess right now with just the Vile Fiend on board, he has two draw from Battle Rage, which is still very good. 2 mana draw 2 is incredibly efficient compared to Arcane Intellect, which is 3 mana draw 2. But you just have to look at it against the potential of Battle Rage, which is draw 4, draw 5, which is not even that hard to achieve in Warrior with their current setups at the time being across the board.
Agreed. And I think that a lot of times Warriors might be, when they're first learning the deck, might be too hesitant to pull the trigger on things like Battle Rage because they want to get maximum value, but sometimes you just need to get it for 2. Sometimes you need to just do it for 1.
Mm-hmm.
Empanizado. Not a really easy position. If he chooses to go for some kind of tempo play. Oh, interesting. Oh, wow. Maximum Van Cleef tempo here?
Yeah, plus the taunt as well. So it's gonna be a 8-10. Excuse me.
Interesting. This is not a play that I was particularly expecting, given that he has Miscreant and Questing Adventures in hand. He doesn't have a way to combo either.
Well, but this Faceless or this Titanic Lackey is protected, so he can curve into Faceless Corruptor most of the time. Paper play onto the Titanic Lackey. So it seems like this is like maximum tempo. Rampage will bring this up to 6 attack. Inner Rage can then bring it up to 8. So he can clear the Edwin with a weapon swing.
Yeah, not a really ideal one, though, because he's going to take 8 himself. So we're just going to go ahead and Sky Raider.
Well, Horde Pillager's decent because it actually gives him something to do next turn.
Yep, and that is a bad position to be in as the Warrior. You can see Muzzy kind of scratching his head. This is not ideal by any means.
No.
And Empanizado does have the Faceless Corruptor on curve now. And Warrior has nothing. So this is a very good pan out. Very nice line spotted by Empanizado to find a way to maximize pressure against Warrior before he can get started. In a matchup where it seemed like Warrior had the edge.
And that's a tough hand, right? You have double Evil Miscreant, Questing Adventure, Edwin. You have a bunch of the stuff that really wants to be comboed, given the resources of the coin and the lackeys and the cheap cards and the Shadow Steps. And instead of like getting greedy and trying to play for a turn where he made a big Questing and a big Edwin, or trying to get greedy and hold on to the lackey or the coin to combo Evil Miscreant if things went awry. He just went for the strongest play on board and gave himself a good follow-up, potential follow-up with Faceless Corruptor. So I definitely like that play. And now he's in a pretty good spot. He just has to figure out if this is a turn for Questing, because he would like backstab or Questing backstab Evil Miscreant, or if he just wants to try and get the lackeys and maybe go for Questing next turn. But it looks like he's just going to put it out there. I like that. Just build the most power on board and go from there. Muzzy's at 11 health.
Yeah, he has almost no more time. Anchor, which isn't what he wants to see, per se. He's got so many weapon charges, but it looks like his draw pan out with the double Battle Rage is a little too awkward here. Can Sky Raider give him anything?
I don't think so. There's not even like the bomb out plan. Because he's only shuffled... Well, he's actually shuffled quite a bit of bombs in there.
Okay,
3
well,
bombs.
if Ankar pulls the Skipper,
Yeah.
and then Sky Raider gives him another Pirate, there's a chance that Muzzy can find a way to clear off the high attack minions. Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. That's pretty ideal. He can kill this questing to stop it from growing. Probably wants to develop armor up and develop anchor. Just to give him outs for the next turn. Yeah.
Do you think it was worth shuffling the other bomb versus... looks like this is game over by the way. Empanizado with that Eviscerate top deck is going to end it. But he also had other ways in case he didn't have the direct damage. The lackeys would have most likely generated that damage.
Yeah.
But that being said, I kind of wonder if Muzzy, it was worth for him to go for that Red Caliber swing versus perhaps setting up that anchor and then attacking immediately so he has a risky skipper already. But either way, it looks like it was Empanizado's game to lose. And that is going to be Game 5, our first series in the books. Empanizado starting off his Hearthstone Grandmasters broadcast appearances with a win over Muzzy, 3-2.
It was a close one, going the distance to game number 5, but still in the games that Empanizado won, it felt like he was, in the driver's seat the whole way through. So I like the Rogue pick as well, going for the full Galakron Rogue with questing. And instead of like Highlander Rogue, the Bladestorm tech, cool in theory, in his Warrior deck, he ended up taking a win in a matchup that maybe he wasn't expecting to, in that Warrior mirror. But like he had it in his back pocket for the Druid with that Bladestorm tech, and I'm curious to see, since I believe both Just Saying and Eddie have the. Oh no, Just Saying does not. Spell Druid,
so. Yeah.
But Eddie